The story begins with an aerial view of a grand country estate, replete with acres of land and modeled after a home of nobility. There are carved chess sets, extraordinary fine silver, flowers of all varieties and colors in antique vases, a varnished wooden grand piano, and a luxurious dining table being set out by the well-dressed staff. It's a television program being watched by a young girl, Emma, on their faded CRT set. She's kneeling right up against the screen, spellbound. Her mother comes in from her shift, working as a nurse at a local hospital. Emma talks to her about the show, Plumpshire Manor, which is her favorite. She dreams about one day living and working in a place like that, learning how to behave among royalty, and managing a whole estate. Her mother laughs fondly, but Emma's eyes are shining with ambition as she settles back in to watch the episode. 14 years later, the story picks up in the big city. Emma is now a waitress at a high-end Italian restaurant, practicing taking multiple dishes at once and pouring wine in the perfect way. She's applied to the American Butler Academy, a prestigious institution which trains and educates would-be butlers, and while she's waiting to see if she's accepted, she's determined to be as good as she can. Upon getting home that night, she sees her letter has finally arrived. She takes a deep breath, psyching herself up, but is disappointed when she opens it to find out she hasn't been accepted. Her mom brings in some takeout, offering her condolences. It seems as though this isn't the first time Emma's been rejected by the academy. She insists Emma is working too hard, but Emma is resolute. The schools are extremely difficult to get into, and she's got to spend every minute she can working towards her goal if she's going to one day achieve her dreams. Her mother reminds her that it's important to be in the present, worried that Emma's whole life will pass by while she's waiting for something that might never happen. At work the next morning, Emma is working behind the bar when she receives a call from Charles Willoughby, the head of the American Butler Academy. He informs her that a spot has opened up and she's next on the list. Emma is delighted, screaming out in joy, forgetting she's at work, happy to have finally gotten the place she so desperately wanted. She gets a taxi to the school, a large old brick building in the Maryland countryside. Inside, it's beautiful, exactly what one would expect from an academy designed to train the elite class of workers Emma hopes to join. She's gazing around in wonderment at the decor when she bumps into another girl, Lisa, a newcomer who is just as enthusiastic as she is. Emma shares that she's always wanted to work on a European estate, and Lisa explains she wants to become a yacht butler. The two look like they'll quickly become fast friends, discussing their applications and the beauty of the place. Soon, they meet the rest of their class, all of whom are young professionals from various service industries, excited to begin their careers. Charles Willoughby comes down the grand staircase and introduces himself, explaining how the course works, that they should expect it to be a difficult few weeks, but at the end of it, they will have gained all the skills they'll need to gain a great position. He says that by the end of the course, they'll need to be able to carry a full service, 4 plates, and 1 trip. He challenges the group to see if anyone wants to try it straight away, and Emma volunteers herself. She manages to place the plates correctly on her arm, but before she can demonstrate carrying it properly, someone walks in late, talking on his phone, and crashes straight into her, knocking all the plates to the floor and smashing every single one. The man who entered, Henry Walker, apologizes profusely as Emma gets up, thoroughly embarrassed. Charles admonishes her unpreparedness. A butler must be aware of proximity to doors, and that they might open at any moment. Henry apologizes again, but Emma's irritated that he ruined her first impression to the headmaster. He follows her into the room where they receive their uniforms, standing very close to her at the back. She's taking notes diligently, but he keeps bothering her, and when she snaps back at him, Charles notices her speaking and clears his throat in an annoyed way. Emma is already done with Henry, frustrated that she's trying to prove herself and do well, and he keeps getting in the way. Charles goes on to explain that he only gives recommendation letters to the top students, and around 1/3 of the class will fail outright. Emma is now terrified that she may be one of them. To add insult to injury, Charles admonishes her afterwards, reminding her that she got there by chance, and that she should bear it in mind. Humiliated and deeply apologetic, Emma rushes away. Lisa has been assigned to be her roommate, and she comforts her, promising that the hardest part was getting in, and now that she's here she will have plenty of chances to prove to Charles how much she wants to be there. Emma's heartened by her companion's words. The following morning, Charles is checking the state of their uniforms. Emma helps Lisa do her tie, and he commends her outfit. When he gets to Emma, though, her cufflink is missing, and she apologizes that she couldn't find it. She isn't the only one who's made a mistake, so Charles lets her off, but tells her she must locate it. Henry arrives at that moment, very late, and Charles turns around to reprimand him. However, his uniform is perfect, and despite his tardiness, the instructor asks them all to take notes about Henry's dress. Emma is infuriated that he seems to keep getting away with everything while she's constantly in trouble. In class, Emma shows off how much she knows about the history of butling. But the ever-irritating Walker is just as smart, countering her points and engaging her in discussion. She's beginning to really dislike him. Later, they're setting a table, and Emma's feeling under pressure, blanking about where to set each kind of knife and which side the water cup is on. Henry helpfully leans over and points out a mistake, and she snaps at him, but the instructor passes by and recommends she follow his advice. The teachers all seem to have nothing but glowing praise for Henry, despite his casual attitude. He reveals to her that at the end of the course, as part of their final exam, they have to set a table for actual nobility. Emma wonders at his familiarity with the course and his obvious experience, but is so nervous at the prospect of having to serve real people from high society that she doesn't ask further. Charles walks them around the garden, explaining the concept behind floral arrangements. Henry is, as usual, not participating, and Emma complains to Lisa and another of their classmates about his attitude. Their friend reveals that Henry's a legacy butler. His family have served the same Duke's estate for over 100 years, and that's why he keeps getting away with everything. His family are friends of Charles's, and he's grown up doing all this since he could walk. Emma is jealous of his luck and has a new level of disrespect for him, believing that he got into the academy only because of nepotism and doesn't actually care at all. In cookery class, Emma is failing woefully, only able to make a basic grilled cheese. Working so hard meant that she often ate out, so she never learned to cook for herself. Henry takes pity on her and suggests a couple of additions to make the dish better, and despite herself she accepts his assistance. She asks him about his background, and he confirms that he's a legacy butler and, no, he doesn't really want to be at the academy at all. She's finding him more confusing by the moment, but has to admit that although his work ethic leaves a lot to be desired, he has been kind to her at every opportunity, and his additions really did make her dish better. However, later on when they're learning to iron tablecloths, she gets into a brief spirited discussion with him over the virtues of buttling, and the distraction causes her to burn it. He frustrates her in a way she can't explain. He has everything she ever wanted, and his devil-may-care attitude towards his lot in life bothers her. At the wine-pouring class, once again Henry is demonstrating his exemplary knowledge and skill, perfectly and effortlessly copying the technique. Emma tries to copy him, but when he moves to help her, her hand slips and she gets wine all over his jumper. She cries out and apologizes, rushing to take him to the kitchen and fix the stain, while the instructor shakes her head at Emma's clumsiness. Henry is kind, as always, saying it was just a mistake and it'll be fine. But Emma's quickly descending into a full-on panic, knowing that she's made so many avoidable errors already that she's probably going to fail. At Henry's reassurance, she scoffs, saying that she actually wants to graduate, and at this he becomes morose, claiming he wants to graduate as well. He may not want to be a butler, but everyone in his family has gone to institutions like that one, and he'll be considered a failure if he can't pass. She asks him what he'd rather do if he could, and he says he's always wanted to be a chef. For the first time, he's showing vulnerability, and Emma begins to understand his wildly indifferent attitude towards the school. But for the first time, she actually admires that he's putting himself through it, because he doesn't want to let his family down, despite his own personal wishes. She admits that her impression of him was all wrong, and he teases her. Charles meets with Emma in his office and warns her that if she continues at the current level, he will have to fail her. She promises to try and do better, knowing that she has the capability, but for some reason she's letting herself get distracted at crucial moments. Charles is pleased she's willing to fight for her place. Later, Emma is practicing her table settings, when in the corridor she finds Henry, who's taking a phone call. He seems to be on his phone a lot. She questions it, and he tells her his father is calling to make sure he's passing. Feeling sorry for him, Emma asks if he's told them what he really wants, and he laughs, because they won't hear any of it. Even his mom, who's American and let him grow up in the States, won't take his side. Emma sympathizes with him, and he says he can't imagine wanting to be a butler. It's always felt like an obligation to him. She tells him about her reasoning, though, that it's what she's wanted to do since she was a little girl. She's researched everything and practiced hard, and she knows it's the life she wants. He laments that that's how he feels about cooking. Finally, it seems they've found some common ground, and she smiles at him before heading up to bed. He watches her go with a lingering look, realizing that there's a spark between them. The following morning, Emma and Jared, the other student who is failing, are taking an exam together. Charles and the other instructor observe as they set a table between them. They forget to put the centerpiece on the table, get the wine wrong, and forget to include a spoon for the dessert. Charles is severely disappointed. The class rankings are posted after the exam, and Emma and Jared are 9th and 10th. Jared comes in, announcing that he's leaving. Charles made it clear to him that it was time to go, because he doesn't have what it takes. The class all hug him goodbye tearfully, and with his departure, that makes Emma the bottom-ranked student. She's panicking, worried that she's going to be next. In their room, Lisa is trying to make her feel better. Emma laments that she's really good when it comes to classroom work, but she seems to fail on the practicals, especially food and wine. Lisa suggests asking Henry for help, that he could be a good resource for her to draw from. Emma protests, citing the fact that Henry doesn't even care, but Lisa persists and Emma begins to realize it may not be such a bad idea. He's always been helpful to her in class, and he has the knowledge she's lacking. Once again, the next day, she selects the wrong wine, and Charles pulls her aside, telling her gently that he knows the passion is there, but she's still making too many mistakes. He, too, suggests that she speak to Henry, and Emma knows she has no choice but to put aside her pride and ask for help if she wants to remain at the academy. Afterwards, Charles confides in the other instructor that he believes Emma's motivation might rub off on Henry, which is why he suggested it. They would be good for each other. Emma locates Henry, summons up her courage, and stutteringly manages to ask him to tutor her. He smiles, teasing her about needing help, but ultimately isn't willing to do it because he doesn't really care about any of it, and he doesn't feel he'll be the best guide for her. Emma pushes him, saying she has something that can change his mind, and takes him to her room to show him an episode of Plumshire Manor. He laughs at the lack of realism, explaining all the things the show doesn't account for, and tells her that in reality, butlers don't have a life, they don't have time for love or families or building relationships. They spend their whole lives serving others. Emma is shocked. She never thought about the profession that way before. Not wanting to deter her from her dream, Henry goes on to say that it's a very respectable profession for someone who is happy to dedicate their life to someone else, but that's not him. He wants a family, a life of his own. There's a pregnant pause as he looks at her, and Emma realizes she is becoming increasingly aware of who Henry is as a person, and is really starting to like him. He's not just the lazy son who got in through nepotism. He has real dreams and passions, and he's thought everything through carefully and considered what he wants, arguably, even more so than she has. He fetches the laptop charger, doing a terrible impression of the butler in the show, and she laughs and hits him playfully. He even finds her missing cufflink for her. He's about to head off when she asks him again about tutoring her, and despite himself, because of how much he likes her, he agrees to help. Henry takes her to the kitchen the following day, telling her to stop taking notes and be present in the moment, because she's getting in her own head about it. They have a conversation about how Henry grew up basically living in the kitchen, watching the chef, and how much he loves food. He asks Emma what her passions are, and she admits she never really had time for anything outside of working for her professional goals, or watching Plumshire Manor. Henry laughs and says that's her whole problem. She's so caught up in worrying about her work, that she's got no balance in her life. And because of that, she's overthinking and underperforming. She needs to find something she can do for fun, to take away the stress, and then she'll be relaxed and do a better job when it comes to crunch time. Emma turns his own advice back on him, asking if he wouldn't rather embrace his own passions and become a chef. Henry shakes his head, because it's impossible, but Emma promises to think on it, wanting to help him fulfill his own dreams. The following day, Henry has come up with an excellent way to help Emma learn. She's motivated by performance, so he's turning it into a game. He's going to race her to be the first one to do a table setting correctly. He knows that by appealing to her competitive side rather than applying a pressured situation, he'll be able to drive her into doing the best possible job. Emma enthusiastically accepts, giggling. It turns out that his method works. When she's having fun, she's not freaking out about what she's doing, and then she gets it right. He rewards her with one of his peanut butter cookies, and she thanks him honestly for his help, believing she's finally now found a way to tackle the exams. Henry's parents turn up to the academy for a visit. Henry isn't thrilled to see them, with a stilted greeting. His parents are instantly suspicious that he's slacking off. Later on, the two of them are talking to the rest of the class. But Henry's in the kitchen alone, and Emma goes to find him and ask him to join them. He's reluctant, but she manages to convince him to go in and spend time with them. Bravely, she brings up the topic of cooking and tries to segue the conversation into Henry potentially being a chef, but his father shuts her down almost immediately, and she shoots him a sympathetic glance. Henry's mother recalls that the duke they work for is looking to hire another under-butler. She promises that if Emma can get a recommendation letter from Charles, they'll put in a word to have her hired on the estate. Emma is thrilled. It's the dream job she always wanted, but she knows she's got an uphill battle ahead if she wants to get a letter. That night, Emma finds Henry in the garden. He admits that he always thinks about running away and just starting out as a chef on his own, but he's held back by his sense of loyalty. She begs him not to give up on his dreams, and he cheers up at her attempts to comfort him. He goes to see his parents off, and Emma watches him leave with a wistful glance. The chemistry between them is obvious, and she's really beginning to fall for him. On their day off, Henry convinces her to go into town with him by promising she'll learn something new while she's there. He takes her to a restaurant with a selection of wines and cheeses, and helps her learn, through real-world experience, of the tastes. Emma gasps as an idea comes to her. Henry should use his culinary skills to impress his parents, cook them a full-on high-society meal, and prove to them that he's good enough to serve the Duke's household in another way. For once, Henry doesn't instantly shoot the idea down, considering that it might actually work. They get ice cream on the way home, and Henry admits that this is his fourth attempt at the Butler Academy. He was failing on purpose, but it never worked. His parents always knew. Emma thanks him sincerely for all his help, and they pause, locking eyes. There's electricity in the air as Henry breathlessly admits that he loves spending time with her. He leans in for a kiss, but she pulls away, apologizing. He looks hurt and confused, because he thought they were on the same page, but she tells him she can't afford any distractions. She's on thin ice, and she can't let her focus get drawn away from school. Disappointed but understanding, Henry walks away. Emma visits Charles to inquire about the recommendation letter. He promises her that because of how well she's been applying herself since working with Henry, if she can successfully pass the final, he will give her one. Emma works with renewed motivation, flying through her theory test and passing the practical exam with Henry, this time with ease. When the class rankings are revealed, Emma has shot up to third in the class, and she's overjoyed. Henry calls her over to celebrate and shows her he's set up a romantic dinner for two in the garden, which he's cooked himself. She chooses the wine, showing how much she's learned from him, and they toast to her success. Emma finds herself wishing that she could work with him when everything's over. She's not ready to leave him behind. Their final exam is upon them, serving a dinner to noble guests in the academy. Emma notices at the beginning that the wine at her place setting is wrong, and goes to switch the bottles, earning an approving glance from Charles. He announces that they have all passed the exam, and while Emma celebrates in joy, Henry is less than excited, slinking off on his own. Charles confirms that he'll write a letter of recommendation for her, and she's thrilled that everything seems to be coming together for her at last. She seeks out Henry, worried that he vanished. He's proud of her, but she insists she couldn't have done it without his help. He's not happy for himself, though, knowing that passing the exam means he'll have no choice but to follow in his father's footsteps. Emma begs him not to give up. He still has one last chance. When his parents come to graduation, he can cook for them and make them see what his true passion is. He promises to think about it. At graduation, Emma's mom is delighted to meet Henry and his parents, who tell her that they've secured the position for her at an estate in Kensington. Emma is thrilled that she's getting her dream job and exchanges a glance with Henry, silently pressing him to speak to them. He tries once again to express his wishes, but his father shuts him down, explaining that the food is excellent, but his skill was never in question, it's the principle. Defeated, Henry gives up, resigned that he will never be able to pursue his dream. Emma bids Henry farewell as they leave the academy, telling him that no matter what he does, he's going to be great at it. It seems like they both have more to say to each other, but neither can find the right words, so she plants a kiss on his cheek and leaves him standing in the entrance hall, full of nervous energy, and wishing he'd had the courage to say what was in his heart. In Scotland, at the Count's estate, Emma is missing home. She realizes that the butler's life is more hectic than she thought, and while she loves being a butler, she wants to experience more outside of that. Henry has awakened in her a new sense of self, a new desire to do more than just work. She's confused and doesn't know what to do. Back home with his parents, Henry's father presents him with his lucky cufflinks for his first day, and faced with the reality that's about to hit him, he finally finds the courage to speak up for himself. He announces that he's going to be a chef, with or without his parents' blessing, and while his father stands there in shock, his mother embraces him, glad that he's speaking his truth at last. Henry heads off, determined to start his new independent life. It seems that Emma's attitude has rubbed off on him, too. The next day, Emma is leaving the Count's estate. She's decided that a butler's life is not for her. In the taxi on the way out, she encounters Henry on the road. He's come up to the estate to see her, and tell her that she's the reason he found the courage to take hold of his own fate. He could never have done it without her, she's his guiding light. After he tells her all that, she admits that she's actually quit the job. She realized that she, too, wants a family and a life outside of her work. Henry's flabbergasted, but ecstatic. He's come all the way up to Scotland to look for a job there, so they could be together. But now she doesn't need to reside there, they could go anywhere in the world. Emma tells him she has an idea, before stepping closer, wrapping her arms around him and soundly kissing him. A while later, Henry is in chef's whites on the top floor of a swanky hotel, and Emma is in a butler's outfit, preparing a table for the evening's guests. He steps out of the kitchen, kissing her in front of all the other staff. She grins, happy that they've found a way to achieve their dreams together.